Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June webinar. Mitchell and I will be talking to you a little bit about how to uncover cost savings and optimize utilities and facilities. For those of you who have seen webinars in the past, welcome again. Any new folks here, just quick housekeeping. We'll be talking, Mitchell and I, informally for about 45 minutes. And if you have any questions, we would be happy to answer those. You can go ahead and type those in the chat throughout the discussion, and we'll make sure we take some time at the end to answer any questions. So my name is Mike Troupis. I'm a vice president here at Foresight Management. Been at the company for 13 years, and I have a background in engineering, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with Mitchell. Mitchell, can you give us a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mitchell Gleason. I've been here for a couple of years. I'm a senior sustainability energy engineer, and I lead everything engineering wise in the company. So
It's going to
looking
be
forward to talking to you guys about the subject today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a great conversation on cost reduction. Okay, so let's talk a little bit just briefly about Foresight. So we are narrowly focused on supporting industrial manufacturing companies make progress on their energy and sustainability journey. We're also supporting companies in environmental health and safety. And the big picture is there's a lot of middle market industrial manufacturing companies that don't have on-staff capabilities for energy management, for sustainability disclosures and reporting, or for EHS. Our vision is to be outsourced energy, sustainability, and EHS managers so that any size manufacturing company can make holistic progress on their journey and their goals. Like I mentioned, we really like to support industrial manufacturing. Most of our clients are, I would say, something like sub 2 billion in revenue, but the ones that are larger, often they have staff, and we then function more as augmentation. Maybe they don't have time to get to the projects, or they don't have specific expertise for the projects that we're working on. But again, our vision here is to support and encourage American manufacturing and keep us as competitive as possible. Okay, so let's jump in. And maybe before we do this, when we were prepping for this webinar, we found there's a lot of uncertainty. I think if there's one word I would say it summarizes 2025, especially for manufacturing clients, this concept of like, oh, we're not really sure, uncertainty is major. And one thing we all agreed on when we created the content for this webinar is there's a lot of certainty in what industrial manufacturing companies are looking for, and that is reducing costs, right? No one, I don't know if I've talked to anybody in the last 13 years who says, I'd be fine spending more on my energy and utilities. So that's kind of the vision for today is we want to offer you some suggestions as you're thinking about, well, hey, maybe we have a lot of uncertainty and we're looking to cut costs. We're going to cover that in kind of two chunks. So Mitchell, if you want to just kind of start us off,
Yeah, sure.
we can jump in from there.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about, like Mike said, utilities and facilities. It's getting expensive. It's getting incredibly expensive. And so, Mike, what is going on in the marketplace that's causing this uptick in prices?
Yeah, so there's a lot like of investments that I think our country has been behind on making when it comes to the electric grid. So a few things, we need to add more generation. Basically from 1990 to 2010, per capita electricity consumption in our country was flat, and since then it's actually started increasing. And there's two major drivers to that. One is vehicle and mobility electrification. So you're seeing more and more vehicles run on electricity instead of oil. And then the second big trend is there's just data centers, and specifically AI is really hitting an inflection point. And so the electric grid needs a significant amount of energy right now. And so we're kind of at this weird confluence where utilities are both having to update the grid from maintenance and updates that they haven't done over the last few decades, and having to grow the grid as there's additional load for the first time in a while as well. So what we're finding is electricity specifically, but utilities generally, are getting more expensive. They're also getting more complicated every year because utilities are realizing there's a lot more electricity consumption in the afternoon on a hot summer day than there is on a weekend in the fall or spring. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but there's a growing push where utilities are forcing energy management down into the end users. And if you as an end user can manage your energy more flexibly, there's a lot of opportunities for cost mitigation. So there's tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars in utility savings if you're willing to proactively manage energy. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here today. So the first half of the webinar, we're going to talk about facilities and how you can reduce, and then the second half we're going to talk about your utilities and how you can manage. So Mitchell, talk to us from a facility standpoint, what are the different levers you can pull to reduce your energy consumption at your facility?
Yeah, so Mike, there's predominantly 5 different levers you can pull when we're talking about a facility. And this would be in the context of a facility walkthrough or audit, where we're taking a look at anything that's consuming energy. And those 5 categories are HVAC, so heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. That would be compressed air, and lighting, and process heating and cooling, and then finally process equipment as well.
Got it. So let's dig into those each in a little bit more detail. And I know you have an extensive background in HVAC, and there's a lot of levers to be pulled there. Just talk to us about what can we do to manage our HVAC and reduce consumption in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll talk about HVAC, but the first thing I want to touch base on is the energy audit itself.
Yeah, great.
So a lot of companies will ask us to have an energy audit or come out and perform one of those. And there's 3 different levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is your basic low-hanging fruit, those items that are really quick to grab, low to no cost items that you can make a significant impact in the facility. The second one's more built towards number crunching, understanding what that would look like as far as replacing it, energy differences. And then the third one is more investment grade, where you're involving an energy model to calculate exactly what that's going to look like when you change or make some of these changes. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is oftentimes our clients do not need that.
Yeah.
And so being able to come in and offer them an idea of where they need to go and where they need to focus is predominantly what they're looking for. And so we can help them do that through these 5 categories, starting with HVAC, like you mentioned.
Great.
So heating, ventilation, air conditioning. There are a lot of efficiency gains that's occurred over the past 10, 15 years especially. Sure. And so we can take advantage of those with clients. Oftentimes manufacturing facilities have very old equipment.
Oh yeah.
And the idea is you want to run it until it dies. But in some cases it makes sense that because of how far those efficiency gains have come in the equipment, it makes sense to replace it sooner rather than later. The other thing we can take a look at as far as heating, ventilation, air conditioning goes is controls and set points with that. So oftentimes the controls are not set in a particular way. So things like scheduling, different pressures, anything of that nature. So being able to make those adjustments with the client will have huge energy savings for that.
Sure. So it sounds like there's really 2 major levers in HVAC. One is the physical equipment. Can you make sure that it is efficient as possible? And like you mentioned, the equipment manufacturers are making more and more efficient units. That's kind of half of it. The other half of it is how you run that equipment. Do you turn it on and run it on the weekends when no one's there? That's obviously, you could have the world's most efficient piece of equipment, but if you're not running it efficiently, that doesn't really help. So it sounds like you kind of want to look at both. You want to look at the efficiency of your equipment, and you want to look at the efficiency of how you're operating it all. And are you turning it off when it doesn't need it?
Absolutely.
Got it. That's interesting. And we're finding too, with especially utility incentives across the country, running out of dollars to incent for lighting, which we'll get to here in a moment. It seems like the HVAC controls is one area where the utilities are actually starting to increase incentive.
Yes, we're seeing a lot more incentives, especially with the utilities, like you mentioned, for those control aspects of the HVAC equipment.
That's huge. And again, you might want to do that more frequently, where mechanical equipment gets updated maybe 10 or 20 years. Coming in and looking at your controls could be something you do on a more frequent basis. Great, that's really helpful. Okay, so let's talk compressed air. This is one where most of our clients are surprised at how much energy truly flows through their air compressor system. And a lot of reason why that's the case is most air compressors run on electricity. There's no separate metering. So I always consider compressed air as like the 4th utility, where people are like, I don't know, it just kind of is in my bill and it runs. So what can you do to manage your compressed air and be more efficient?
Yeah, the first thing with compressed air systems is they're going to leak, and it's going to happen no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And it typically happens at those joints where the hoses are moving a lot. And sometimes you can find them through the auditorily listening and you can hear that, but oftentimes manufacturing facilities are incredibly loud. And so you're not going to hear where all of those leaks are. And so our recommendation is that you go through annually with an ultrasonic leak detector, which allows you to, with all the background noise, find where those leaks are, and not just that, but quantify what that looks like so you can see what those savings potentials are when you make that fix. And so that has a huge impact for facilities. And typically when we go and do a leak detection study, we find anywhere between 10 and 30 leaks, so which is a considerable amount. And that's anywhere between 20 and 50% of the compressed air system energy usage that we can save a client. And when, Mike, as you talk about the 4th utility, that adds up very quickly.
Oh yeah, and I really want to underline this because a lot of people don't quite understand this, but Mitchell is not joking when somewhere between 20% and half of all of the air your system generates is likely being leaked out. Very tight systems are 20% or less, but most systems that haven't had a leak study done in the last 6 or 12 months are going to be over that, which is incredible when you think about it. It's just so much air and frankly dollars you're blowing, literally blowing out the window.
Yep.
So
and then on top of that, when you fix those leaks, it allows you to take advantage of things like controls. Because oftentimes you bump the pressure of your system up to make up for those leaks in your system. So when those are fixed, that you can drop that down, and that's a 1% savings for every 2 psi you can reduce.
Got it. So it sounds like there's some holistic thinking around your air system, which is if you can tighten it up, you can run it better too.
Absolutely.
Nice. Great. Well, that's a good opportunity. I touched on this earlier, but let's dig in a little bit more. Obviously, lighting has changed significantly in the last decade. Talk to us about what industrial manufacturing companies are doing to reduce their energy consumption in lighting systems.
Absolutely. So LED technology has been out on the market for quite some time, and we're finding that more and more clients already have upgraded to that LED technology. There, you still have the few that you walk in, you see those metal halides, and you realize, oh my goodness, we're going to save them a lot of energy through this recommendation. But most oftentimes, we're finding that clients have already taken care of that LED. Things we can do is take advantage of when you do replace those utility incentives.
Yeah,
that's always a big number for it. That's probably the biggest item that I see with that. And then typically when you're looking at a lighting project, it's 5 years or less for return on investment.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And we're seeing big picture. Just the last two topics we just covered are probably the two things you if you haven't addressed, you should, in most cases, have already addressed, and that's lighting and compressed air. We're finding those are kind of like the two lowest hanging fruits for industrial manufacturing. And so actually, on the lighting side, most have gone to LED, like Mitchell said. So there's not as much opportunity there. But then the compressed air, it's low hanging fruit in the fact that you can make it more efficient, but it's also kind of recurring in nature, which is even though you did a leak study this year, doesn't mean you're going to be efficient in 2 or 3 years down. Where LEDs, once you get them up, they're quite efficient, and the light levels are also so much improved. I think that's another driver of why so many companies did it, is they found savings, but they also found, hey, like this can improve quality, improve employee morale. I can just see better in the plant.
And the other thing you can do with lighting is take advantage of controls. So say you have a warehouse where there's very low traffic. If you put an occupancy sensor or something like that on the lighting, you can reduce those lighting levels or remove it from the equation, which it still has energy savings.
Yeah, and that was fun to learn about when LED came around, because occupancy sensors on fluorescent lights, the cycling is hard on your fluorescent lamps, and they would burn out more frequently. And what was interesting to learn is, to your point on LED, controls are a lot more popular because you can cycle those LEDs as much as you want, and it doesn't adversely impact the life length of the fixture. So a lot of benefits in managing your lighting well, and that's something, if you haven't done, I would highly encourage you to put at the top of your priority list, just because of, like Mitchell said, incentives and fast ROI. Well, that's great. Okay, so we just covered, like, every building typically has some amount of heating and cooling, some amount of compressed air, and some amount of lighting. However, a lot of our industrial clients have things that are going on with their process. So let's talk a little bit about specifically process heating and cooling, because a lot of our clients are maybe in food, and there's a lot of heating and cooling in food, or they're in plastic injection molding or metal, some sort of hot metal working. What can you look at when it comes to your process heating and cooling at your manufacturing facility?
Absolutely. So with HVAC, when we already discussed, that's occupant comfort, whereas in process heating and cooling is specifically focused on the process happening inside the facility. So there's requirements for temperature controls or humidity controls that we'll run into. And ultimately, it's going to be the same savings potential that we have with HVAC for occupant comfort, same side on the process, where we can take advantage of those efficiency gains in equipment. We can take advantage of better controls, more tighter controls, and save the client energy without impacting the process itself.
The other thing we're seeing a lot on process is heat recovery, especially if you're using heating and cooling. Can you give our viewers a little bit of an overview on, like, just big picture how heat recovery can work at a facility?
So say you can tie that into potentially domestic hot water systems, where you have a giant process that's producing a lot of heat. Then you can take a coil and recover some of that energy and dump it into another stream to heat it, to do a secondary heating or preliminary heating, which gets it up a little bit higher, which can save energy on the actual systems that are in place to handle that heating load.
Yeah, and that is really compelling. I think as the low-hanging fruit gets pulled by a
Mhm.
lot of clients, we're finding heat recovery is a big one. Like you said, like people have all this heat blowing out the stack, and but they also
Yep.
need warm water somewhere else. Can you just run it through, or move this heat over there, or move that heat over here,
And
etc.
And oftentimes with process heating, you can take that heat recovery and use it for occupant comfort as well. So say compressed air systems,
Mhm.
you have that exhaust that's coming off the compressors, which is super hot. And I'm seeing this more and more, which is great, where you have a damper system set up on top of it that you can dump that air into the space or send it up into the atmosphere if you don't want the heat. So,
Got
yep.
it. Yeah, and this one I'll say you're going to need someone like Mitchell to come on site to look at. These are ones where it's a little less of a no-brainer, like, oh, there's fluorescence or metal halides, go change it. But certainly, I would say spending a little bit of time to look at this and assess it, especially if you use a lot of process heating or cooling, you might have a lot of energy there that's just getting wasted, and that can be your next level of energy efficiency.
Mhm.
Great. Okay, so I want to take an intermission here before we jump to the last topic, which is process manufacturing, and talk about water. I think we didn't make a slide because there's not like a whole specific conversation here, but Mitchell, we're really focused in this webinar on electricity and natural gas because those are really kind of the main utilities for clients. But talk to me a little bit about water and water efficiency.
Yeah, oftentimes water, when it comes to a manufacturing facility, is going to take several different roles. Number one, domestic hot water or domestic water, which is in every single facility that has occupants in it. What we tend to find with water is that the savings potential we have there, though great, when you're looking at the entire picture of energy spend in a facility, is very, very small.
Yes,
So
correct.
we can still make those recommendations, but oftentimes it's not as attractive as some of these bigger projects that would have a better savings potential.
Yeah, we see that for sure with like energy and or excuse me, waste and water.
Mhm.
Both are there's opportunities. It's just the percentage of spend is
Correct.
so small on those two relative to electric or natural
Correct.
gas.
So where we're going to talk next, the process equipment is
Sure.
where we're going to see more of that water.
Okay.
So in like wastewater management, where it's going to be process related. So
Got it.
that's why it's kind of clumped into that one.
All right, well, that's a perfect transition. So
Yeah.
the last topic is your specific manufacturing equipment, and I'll just preface this by saying, after doing this for 13 years, and Mitchell and I sitting in a lot of industrial client meetings, this is often the one. Rightfully, you might be already like getting a little sweaty just hearing about this. Is like we always want to tread lightly. We understand for basically everyone, your bread is buttered by making these finished goods and selling them. So generally, I would find organizations are most reticent to change, or at least reticent to change their production, just because it's so integral to what they're doing. But there still are opportunities. So Mitchell, can you just talk to us a little bit about what you're looking at when it comes to manufacturing equipment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at process equipment, proprietary, and I definitely want to drive home what Mike said. We're not making any changes to the process itself. It's typically looking at the equipment that's doing the process and seeing if there's a more efficient piece of equipment that can handle that same task. So, for instance, we were in a facility the other day and they're evaluating their welders and looking at a potential inverter technology. So that's one aspect that we can help run some calculations and look and say, hey, is this an efficient change? Does it make sense? Or is this something that we can look at for replacing and plan for it down the road? So we're looking for efficiency gains there as well.
Sure.
And as I mentioned with wastewater, so oftentimes with wastewater, it's a large amount of volume that you're shipping off site. So anything you can do to reduce what that volume is saves the client money. So it's not just energy savings, it's more so management of the flow of how things are going to. So there's different things you can do to reduce what that load is, and then also recycling and reclaiming some of that through the process.
Yeah, that's really well said. I would say what I see where I see our clients engage Mitchell and his team really well is they say we're looking at this piece of equipment and we really understand our production. What we don't understand is energy and the impacts associated. Mitchell, can we provide you this detail? Can you ask some questions? And then can you help us make sense of, yeah, maybe this thing can produce twice as many products as the other machine. Is it going to consume twice as much energy? In many cases, you can run those calculations and say it's actually only going to consume, I'll make it up, 1.5 times more energy. And so in fact, you're getting a huge efficiency
With double,
gain.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times is they're saying like we're literate in manufacturing whatever we're doing. We're not as literate in energy. Can you be our support in helping us make sense of what we're seeing in these spec sheets and translating that into what we have and what we're going to be moving into? Yeah. Perfect.
For sure.
Good.
Well, Mike, do you think we should transition over into utility, and I'll take the reins here
Yeah,
and
well,
start asking you some
Which
questions?
host? Yeah, you can be the host now. All right.
Yeah, so So let's talk about utility optimization and talk to me what companies can do to reduce costs.
So there's a number of ways companies can reduce costs, and we'll kind of go through it similar to like what we did with Mitchell here. I think the biggest thing I want to drive home is I think too many organizations, when you first talk to them about their utility management journey, they treat their utilities as overhead. They say, if I don't pay my electric bill, they're going to turn the lights out on me. And yes, that is true. If you don't pay your bill, they are going to turn the lights out on you. But there's a lot more you can do. It's not like you're completely helpless here. And in many ways, I like to big picture think about it like phone plans. We're both millennials, and I vividly remember in high school getting yelled at by my mom because we weren't on an unlimited text plan, and this was when texting became popular. And I was texting my buddies and my girlfriend a ton, and all of a sudden my mom got some massive bill. And so she moved us from, ever plan to an unlimited text plan. And then she told me, all right, now you can text. And everything was fine. And there's actually a lot of that happening in utilities, which is if you don't understand it and you don't take the time to look at your cell phone bill and your kids are texting all the time, you all of a sudden have a $400 phone bill, you just keep paying it. Well, you actually might take the time to dig in, understand how you're being billed, and then do stuff. So we're gonna jump into like 4 different areas of how you can really proactively manage your utility spend so that you're keeping your costs as low as possible.
Okay. So let's start with the first one, peak demand. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so this is a new trend on the electricity side of things, which is there's a lot of different charges. Yeah, you guys can go to the next thing. There's a lot of different charges associated with your electricity bill. So in the past, electric meters could really only just measure your kilowatt hours. And so what they would do is they would just bill you for your electric consumption. And now with industrial meters, yeah, you can go to the next slide. Well, I'm all over the place. Yeah, with electric meters, you can excuse me, you can basically understand like what is your max demand, as well as what is your total energy consumption. And so what we're finding for clients are the utilities have to invest in infrastructure. And so that maximum draw that you have over the course of a month or even a year, they will invoice you for that for the entire time that you're operating. And so there's big opportunities here to save cost by making sure that you don't set really high peak demands. And so there's a number of ways to do this. One is we do like demand studies where we're actually analyzing every 15 minutes what you're drawing, and that's how the utilities set these demand charges, and then help offer advice on things like, hey, you're turning all of your ovens on Monday morning when you fire up from the weekend, and you're having this huge draw, and then your energy consumption drops, but you still have to pay for that peak demand. And so helping customers understand, could you maybe spread out startup of your facility so that you don't have these big draws? Because what we find is in some cases, you will still consume the same amount of kilowatt hours over a given month, but if you better manage your demand, your costs will actually go down, even though you still had to consume the same amount of power. And also, not only is this good for your utility costs, this is also just better for the grid. The whole point of why utilities are charging for these big peaks is that's when it really stresses the grid. And like I talked about earlier, the grid is really starting to hit its max capacity right now. And so there's a lot of utilities looking for any possible way that they can to incent you to drop that demand so they have more capacity to transmit the electricity across the utility grid. And so what we're finding, and this is really a surprise to a lot of companies, is if you're on an industrial rate, 50% or more of your total electric costs can just be for that peak demand of the month or the year, which you think about it, that's crazy. That's set in 15 minutes and you're now paying on it for the next month or the next year. There's a lot of opportunity to manage.
And Mike, we just had a recent project where the client had a huge peak in 1 month and the rest of it was a third lower than that. And they're paying that peak for the entire time.
Yeah, and it's like you had a power outage, you wanted to get something running, you didn't pay attention, and it's like that stuff can hang with you for a long, long time. So yeah, that's a really good point as an opportunity to better manage. Yep.
Excellent. Well, Mike, let's keep moving. Let's talk about time of use rates. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, so this is a similar vein to what I was talking about on peak demand. So now we're getting, because of smart meters and like I talked about, utilities better able to understand when you're using your power. Is they're saying electricity is typically, depending on what grid you're in, the most expensive on the hottest afternoon in the middle of the summer. Think about it. Everybody's air conditioners are blasting. And in other places like California, they actually have solar to offset that. And so their highest peak, where they just don't have enough production and a lot of demand, is actually shifted to the afternoon and evenings. And so depending on what kind of grid you operate in, the utilities are finding that there's just a window of maybe a few hours on weekdays, usually weekends are off peak, where they're saying we just really need people to understand this is expensive. So we're going to charge you a pretty hefty premium on peak power prices for that. But all of your electricity consumption on nights and on weekends when our grid has plenty of power, we're going to charge less. And so this is a real live example of a California utility up here. And you can see effectively you pay 24 cents a kilowatt hour during off peak times, and you pay 53 cents for power on peak times. So you're actually paying twice as much for the same kilowatt hour if you need it. In this case, between 4 and 9 p.m. June through September. And like I mentioned, that's when the solar production in California is dropping, but all your residential and commercial is still climbing and high. So what we're finding with a lot of our industrial manufacturing clients is let's help them understand, one, are they on a time of use rate? If not, this doesn't really matter. But if so, then you should start to look at, well, what is the delta between my cheapest kilowatt hour and my most expensive kilowatt hour? And once you start to figure that out, you can say, well, wow, there's maybe, in this case, over 2 times difference. We should start to figure out, can we schedule operations in our manufacturing so that I'm not telling you to shut down, right? Like that's silly. A lot of organizations are still running their plants 24/7, but you may have grinding operations, ancillary operations, operations that only run 1 out of the 3 shifts, et cetera. Can you move those processes 2 times where you're paying for off-peak electricity and really run the minimal amount of power during on-peak? And so there's a huge education component here. What happens is these are to varying levels of quality being relayed from utilities to end users, but we find is the plant manager doesn't understand how these work. Your operations folks who are running and scheduling production don't understand. And so we try to really like educate our clients. Hey, there's a big difference here and you're on a time of use rate. How can we support you, or how can you guys, without major intrusiveness, shift operations?
And Mike, if we're honest with ourselves, it's not like there's a lot of education out there from the utilities when it comes to this type of information. So
yeah, you get this graph and that's it. And they're basically saying good luck and try to figure out how to manage it yourself. And so, like you said, it takes time with you getting in the factory, interacting with, again, some people downstream, right? Like a sustainability person may be really passionate about this, but if operations and plant management don't understand, you're never going to be able to drive that change. Yeah.
So we've talked about peak demand. We've talked about time of use. Let's touch base on sales tax exemptions.
Oh yeah, this one is quite possibly the most lucrative opportunity for savings. And the reason why is because in the last examples for managing your demand better and managing your time of use rates better, it's one of those things where once you figure it out and you manage it better, the savings start to show up. In sales tax, it's really the one thing on utilities where you actually may qualify for a refund for overpaid sales tax. So let's take a minute and talk. This varies by state. So there are 50 different rules here, depending on what state in the US you run in. But a lot of states want manufacturing to take place in their state. It's really good for the economy. So what they say is all of the electricity or natural gas or other fuels that you're consuming to make the legal definition is tangible personal property, finished goods, all the parts that your manufacturing operations make. If you're doing that, all of the electricity and natural gas associated with the manufacturing process is tax exempt. And this is true for over half of the states, and it's especially true for a lot of Midwestern states where we have heavy industrial manufacturing. So like Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Tennessee, et cetera, all offer sales tax exemptions for manufacturing. And so a lot of companies don't realize they have this and they're paying the full amount of sales tax, whether it's on their electricity distribution bill or their supply bill or both. And so when we identify that, then what you need to do is go and do what's called a predominant use study, where Mitchell or someone from his team actually goes into the factory and inventories. Here's all of the equipment that's making finished goods. It's plastic injection molding machines, ovens, metal stamping, whatever it is. That's all the exempt part. And all of your, think about offices, printers, outdoor lighting, that's all taxable. That's not actually making anything. So you actually have to go in and inventory all of that, and you run it through a big Excel calculator, and you come up with a percentage, usually somewhere between 80 and 90% of a factory is tax exempt. And then we sit down, we explain this to the client, and then they say, yep, everything looks good. And then there's a bunch of paperwork to be filed. So we fill out a bunch of forms, submit them to the utility, to the state. They review everything and they approve it. And then what gets wild is, like I said, in many states, they'll give you refunds for overpaid taxes going back 2, 3, and 4 years are probably the most common. Missouri is wild. They do 10-year. We're in the process of doing a client where it's over $1 million refund for overpaid taxes over the last 10 years in the state of Missouri. So these can be very lucrative from not only do you get the refund for overpaid, but then you get the savings moving forward. So this is just one of those things where that your state that you operate in may really want you to be here, and so they really want you to be more competitive. And so this is a really big opportunity. I would encourage you take a look at your utilities if you're unsure. You can always send them over to us, and we'd be happy to take a look and let you know, hey, we think there's opportunity.
Now, Mike, I think it would be worth mentioning some of the pitfalls that companies can
Please.
fall into, and that's what
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of influx of work in this area, where if you claim 100%, the state
said.
will audit you.
Yep.
So there is no facility that's going to have 100% energy towards manufacturing process. So there's always going to be those extra lightings, your restrooms, your closet, yep, office spaces. So it's definitely something that we talk to our clients about.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and that is something we're seeing, especially in states where you can take a partial percentage. If you take 100%, like they're going to get you. There are some states like Indiana where if you get over 50%, now we're really getting in the weeds, but if you get over 50%, then they just give you the 100% exemption. So it's not always bad if you look at a bill and you see no taxes, but depending on the state, some companies, like you said, they're like, oh, maybe in Michigan or Ohio where it's partial, they're like, well, I'm manufacturing, I'll take 100% exemption. And it's like, you can't do that. You got to pay tax on the part that's taxable. So that's a great, it's a great one to lift up.
Yeah, sorry for bringing us into the weeds.
No, I love it. Two engineers, it's kind of what you're going to get here on the webinar.
All right, so we've talked about 3 out of the 4. Let's talk about the 4th one, and that's the energy procurement. Can you give us a little information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a ton of opportunity for energy procurement. Specifically, there is what's called deregulation across different states, and this is perfect. We got the map up, so you can kind of look and see where your facilities operate. This is really popular in Europe, and it's kind of partially popular in the US. But basically, it started in the 1990s, but basically the concept was the utility that distributes all of your electricity or natural gas. So think about it, the utility that owns all of the pipes for gas or all the power lines for electricity. You can't choose a different one of those. They still own the pipes or they still own the power lines. But what you can do is you can shop competitively for multiple different suppliers of the molecules of natural gas or the electrons of electricity. And so what happened is a lot of states started moving towards deregulating, since a lot of utilities have found this isn't necessarily great for profitability, so they will fight it to the death now. So we actually haven't seen this map change a whole lot in the last decade. But what ends up happening is all of the states here that have deregulated for electricity or natural gas, you can pick a different supplier other than utility for your electric or natural gas supply. And so there's a ton of opportunities here. First is we do a lot of energy management. Obviously, this whole webinar is focused on utility and energy management. However, we have a whole sustainability part of the business. And so a lot of our clients who are looking to buy maybe 100% renewable electricity or they have renewable energy goals, if you're in these deregulated states, you can actually now not only just shop for brown power, but you can shop for green power as well. So you have a lot more opportunities. Some clients are still like, hey, I'm doing my best, but I'm not ready to buy renewables. And in that case, that's fine. You can still go out and competitively shop your electricity or natural gas. And so you might say, well, how do I get savings? And the game is there's a lot of like suppliers out there that will literally go door knock industrial parks, and they'll go find the front desk person or somebody else, and they'll unwittingly sign a contract to buy energy. And they'll say, hey, it's a great deal. We guarantee you'll get savings for the first 3 or 6 months over this 1 or 2 year contract. But what the game in energy procurement is that once your contract is done, you usually move to what's called a month-to-month variable price. And what unfortunately you live in is the supplier names their price land. And so often we're finding clients who sign up with us, we start looking under the hood, we realize they signed a contract 5 years ago for 2 years, they forgot about it, and now that supplier went from market price to 2 or 3 or 4 times more expensive than market price. They're just banking on you not realizing this. And so then you really want to start to build a procurement strategy. And this is something we're seeing like corporate really take over. Historically, a lot of plants would run their own P&L. So corporate would say, you do all the things you want, and the plant manager and purchasing people would buy energy at the plant level. Well, that can be fine, but again, let's pretend your purchasing person finds a different job or retires. no one knows that this contract is there, and no one's managing it. And then all of a sudden you're getting in this really bad contract. And so a lot of industrial manufacturing is starting to say, nope, we're gonna move procurement up into either corporate procurement, corporate purchasing, or corporate EHS or sustainability people, and we're helping them manage that at the corporate level. And that way you can really see, like, here's my 15 or 20 energy contracts across all of my sites, and understand, well, is my goal to get the lowest cost possible, and I have some tolerance for price variability, or is my goal to reduce volatility? And in those cases, we can actually buy the electricity and natural gas out multiple years and make sure that you're never at a point where you're out of contract in getting charged this massive premium. So it's been an interesting trend over probably the last 5 years. Just like IT, right? Everyone got data breaches, and if one of your plants get hacked, the whole thing does. So IT got moved up to corporate, and corporate says, we don't care that you run your own P&L. You have to use our IT systems. We're finding that now in procurement as well. And so we're helping these organizations build holistic energy procurement strategies. And again, these can be significant cost savings, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how bad contracts are or other things. But this is a great way for you to look at your organization and really wring costs out and make sure that, like, am I exposing myself to unnecessary risk because I don't know where all of my energy contracts are across my whole footprint.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we did it. We wanted to finish. I know, like, Mitchell and I just opined for 40 minutes about all kinds of big picture stuff. And so we wanted to finish with a case study and just some kind of big picture observations. So Mitchell actually just got done helping a very large publicly traded industrial manufacturing company that manufactures goods in the building material space. And Mitchell, can you just talk us through kind of like what we did and how much savings we captured this client?
So this particular client wanted two things from us: a sales tax study and then also a leak study. So we were able to go on site, and with the sales tax, we found that they had over $100,000 available coming back to them from a refund, and then year-over-year savings from not having to pay that sales tax. So it's a huge win for the client on the sales tax side. And we also did an air leak study, and we found 29 leaks across their facility, which added up to almost $10,000. So it was over $9,000, which, when you're looking at that, that's almost $130,000 of savings that we were able to get into their hands within a short period of time. So it was a huge win for that client.
And what's amazing is this is one plant, and this client has probably over 100 manufacturing facilities globally. So not all of them can be this much of a home run, but the reality is, I think sometimes we can perceive, whether your organization is massive or tiny, that this stuff kind of just manages itself. And that was like that's the big, like, takeaway I want you all to walk away with here today is you can't manage what you don't measure. And if you're not taking the time to understand and make sure that you are wringing out the inefficiencies in your operations and facilities, as well as reviewing your utilities, you're likely leaving potentially significant money on the table. And in this case study, the cost that they paid us was quite low, and so this ended up being like way under a 6-month payback, which, again, I've yet to talk to an industrial manufacturing company where I say, hey, pay me $50,000 and I'm going to get you $100,000 a year in savings, that says, yeah, that's not very interesting to me. Pretty much all of them are like, yeah, let's do that now. We want all that savings. And so really big picture, just want to encourage you all as we wade into the uncertainty that is here in 2025. If you haven't taken the time to understand your operations and your utilities, there may be opportunities for cost. And certainly, like I said, kind of at the beginning of this, you may be saying, hey, Mike, this is all amazing, but I'm a one person at the organization, or I don't even have an energy or sustainability title. I'm just trying to piecemeal this together. This is something certainly Foresight can support on. A lot of times we're able to and capable of doing a no-cost review of your utilities, and we can come back and say, hey, there's a lot of opportunity here. Let's help you get it. Or, hey, you're actually looking pretty good. Maybe we focus on your utilities. So we would love to connect with you. In fact, we actually, not only do we have opportunities to review your utilities, we're also running a special right now with the marketing team. It's actually going to be done, is it Friday? I think it's Friday, yeah. So here by Friday, we're actually going to give away what Mitchell was just talking about in that amazing case study. We can come in and do a compressed air leak study at the same time. We'll do kind of that ASHRAE level 1 walkthrough to identify opportunities. And this is a really popular combination that our clients are doing right now. And so you can enter using the QR code or visiting the website to get a free energy walkthrough and leak study at one of your facilities. So we'd love to connect with you. We would love for you to enter this, and we'll be announcing who has won here next month. With that, I want to just take a moment and say, if you have any questions, we'd love to address them here right now. But Mitchell, thank you so much for
Appreciate the time, Mike.
yeah, taking us here. So we're gonna hop into Q&A. Give me one moment. They're getting sent to me here live. So I'm gonna hop on Carolyn and see what kind of questions we have here on Teams. Perfect. Okay, so the first question is, what is the typical return on investment for performing a facility energy audit?
Well, performing a facility energy audit is not a return on investment because it's just that. It's an audit. It's discovering. It's the process of looking for those items that you can implement to change. So if we find a lot of low to no cost items that you can implement and you implement them, then there's where you find that savings. But typically, we can identify anywhere between 10 and as high as 50% savings on energy across the board through an audit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and again, don't be discouraged by the ROI. The reality is, you have to build like a plan, right? If you're just going in blind, and we see this a lot, which is some people's strategy for investing in energy efficiency and facility management is, oh, this guy knocked on my door and this person cold called me and they're slinging solar and they're telling me I have the world's greatest roof for solar and I should cover it with as many solar panels as the salesman can sell me, right? And it's like that's not really a winning strategy. And so yeah, it's hard to like quantify an ROI, but the reality is we find you have a lot more success in your decarbonization and energy efficiency journey if you say, no, I have a plan. I know what my low-hanging fruit are, as opposed to, yeah, this person door knocked me and she told me that she's got the best deal on lighting and he told me he's got the best deal on solar, and we're just kind of just picking random projects that salespeople are pushing.
but I also think that goes back to what I was saying about the different levels of ASHRAE audits.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we can figure out what the client needs by having that conversation with
Yeah.
them. And the lower the level, the less money it costs. And so it can be the most cost-effective solution for the client that we can find.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mitchell. And I think as an engineer turned salesperson here at Foresight, this is something I'm really proud of, which is like we don't need to oversell audits. In fact, most of the time a client comes to us thinking they want a higher visibility, and we actually recommend after having a conversation that they invest actually less money for a less granular report. And the reason why is they're just not ready for the granularity. And so Mitchell's exactly right. A level one walkthrough where we're just looking at the systems and helping you understand what's efficient, what's not, what's a general payback. I mean, a lot of times we're doing these between $4,000 and $8,000 a facility. So this is not a lot of capital investment for you to get a pretty good understanding of kind of, oh, this is a really efficient building. Maybe we shouldn't be focusing our efforts here. Or, oh, this is a very inefficient building. Maybe we should buy another audit, or maybe we should do these 7 projects that Mitchell identified as under 2-year paybacks. And then let's start digging into
Absolutely.
it in a little bit more depth. Great. Okay, so another question. How long does it take to develop an energy-wide procurement strategy? I can cover this one. So there's 2 phases to this. Generally, the discovery and developing a strategy may only take, call it a couple months to 6 months, depending on how many locations you have. And the big piece there is generally we're trying to, one, collect all of your utilities. That's something we often start with our clients at. And then also, if they're hiring us to do the procurement piece, is we want to collect all of those energy contracts. So all the electric contracts, all the natural gas contracts, we want to understand who's your current provider, what kind of contract do you have? Are you, like I mentioned, are you currently under contract till, I'll make it up, 2026 or 2027? Or did your contract expire in 2023 and you're paying a small fortune? Once we've done that, again, that can be as short as like a month or so, up to a handful of months, depending on how quickly we can work to collect the contracts. There is a decent amount of time. The term I use is like basically digging out or triaging. So Adam and Vicky and their team, they run a lot of the energy procurement here. They have a really good strategy, which in triaging, their first focus is going to be all of those energy contracts that have expired, because those are often where you're paying a small fortune. And that's where we can notch the first and earliest and biggest win. So they'll start by picking the most expired contracts and working their way back. And so it can take, to be transparent, 2, 4, 6 months to dig out. So a lot of times from getting an organization who's had no procurement strategy, Nobody in purchasing owning it, and that's no fault of purchasing people. Goodness gracious, purchasing people are buying insurance, IT, and energy. I can hardly keep track of energy. I couldn't imagine being responsible for IT in healthcare too. So it's a really big job for purchasing folks. And so it just takes a lot. It can just take a lot of time to go from discovery to moving. And so realistically, going from they sign up and utilities are a disaster to we're proactive, we have long-term hedges in place, a really competitive pricing can be anywhere from a handful of months if you only run a handful of facilities up to 6 to 12 months if you're operating 20, 30, 50 manufacturing operations globally. So it does depend, but it's something you want to start with right away. And again, we'll take a really strategic approach to making sure that we're focusing on the worst contracts first and then kind of slowly digging our way out from there. Okay, how many utility bills do you need to evaluate peak demand, sales tax? Is this something we need to provide a whole year's worth of invoices or just a quarter or a month?
You know, tag team it?
Yeah, go for it. You want to take it? Yeah, you can take it first crack
Sure.
and I'll finish.
I think it is always good to start with at least a year to do a review, make sure you have all of your ducks in a row, so you understand what an annual energy profile looks like. That way you can, when we're running calculations for a predominant use study on site for sales tax, we need to calculate how much energy each piece of equipment's using, or each light fixture, each plug load. And so in order to get that properly calibrated, we need to know what an annual energy profile looks like. So I'd say it's at least 12 months of energy bills.
Yeah, and we'll kind of guide you. I think Mitchell's answer is perfect for like the production side of the business where we actually have a contract and we want to make sure that it's as successful as possible. And that will communicate like, hey, you can go back 10 years in Missouri. We need to actually collect 10 years of utilities. We're not going to make people collect data that they don't need. I think on the front end, especially when it comes to building a relationship either with an existing client who's not using us to manage their energy or a whole brand new client, I'm always happy and my team is always happy to do like a kind of a 10,000 foot review for, oh man, these areas look really bad, or hey, these things seem really fine. We can dig in more, but you might be fine. In those cases where it's like there's no scope of work, you're not paying us any money, we're doing kind of a complimentary review just to either provide you the peace of mind that you're doing great or provide you the opportunity for cost savings. In those cases, if you can get me a recent electric and natural gas invoice for all the sites, that's enough usually for me to come back to you and say, hey, I think I found some stuff. Can you send more? Or hey, I think everything seems pretty fine. So Mitchell's right. Like there's a huge range of what we need, and it kind of depends on, are you early on and we're still kind of discovering the opportunity for utility management, or are you really far along and we've agreed on a scope of work? And in those cases, we want to collect a lot of data to be able to proactively manage. So hopefully that answers your question, and it does vary. Does Foresight act as an energy broker when you review procurement opportunities and bills? So the short answer is yes, we act as an energy broker. We're quite a bit different than most brokers out there. So this is very common, and this is good language for whoever asked this. The industry for buying electricity and natural gas that's deregulated is an energy broker. And historically, these brokers, that's all they do. So they come to you and their value proposition is, send me your bills and contracts, we'll look at it, and you don't have to pay me anything for me to buy your energy. I think we all now in 2025 with the internet and transparency and information realize that's a little disingenuous. The reality is you're correct. That broker, you're not paying them directly any money. What happens in those cases is they're going and shopping suppliers, and when they come back to you with pricing, they've told those suppliers to mark up the energy and pay them behind the scenes. And so this is where you have to be really careful with brokers. Brokerage in energy purchasing can have a really bad reputation, and it's something we're really passionate about improving here at Foresight. And it's because we don't need to just sell energy to eat. We offer all kinds of energy, sustainability, and EHS services. But the biggest thing when you're talking to a broker is transparency. And so that's understanding if you in fact don't need to pay the broker, that's totally fine, but you need to understand what are they marking up your energy and how much money are they making from your supplier. We hate to hear this, and we see these stories of people where they're like, yeah, they competitively bid 8 suppliers, so I thought it was great. And it's well, the reality is that broker is marking your energy up 10%. Like that's completely unnecessary. The more common industry standard is closer to like 2 to 5%. And frankly, we still think that's even too much. And so oftentimes our costs can be below 2% of your total spend. So it's a long-winded of saying yes, we can function as a broker. The other thing a lot of companies do, especially more of our sophisticated, larger industrial clients, they say we don't want all this cost bloating up our utility bills from brokerage fees. Can we pay you a flat annual fee for your time and resources to manage this for us? And then can you put it in all of your RFPs to suppliers that you will not receive any compensation? And that's something that has allowed us to grow our business really quickly because companies really love the transparency there. They say, I know I'm paying Foresight a set amount of money to manage all this energy, and I also know they're not bloating up my utility costs by adding in brokerage fees like your historic brokerage houses do. And some brokers, especially the really old school ones, they won't do that. They'll say, no, like we're buying it. We're not giving you any transparency. And I would always say if your broker is unable or unwilling to tell you how much they're making off of you, that's, in my opinion, a major red flag that you're likely paying a significant premium to manage your energy. And so that's something that's really important. Great. Well, hey, that was all the questions that we have right now. I just want to say thank you again to Mitchell for being on the webinar. Thank you all for attending. We're so grateful that you were here. Again, both the option to apply for the complimentary energy walkthrough and leak study is available. So we'd love for you to sign up for that. And like I mentioned, just reach out to us at Foresight or reach out to me. We're always happy to do a complimentary 10,000-foot review of your utility. So if you have electric or gas bill, just don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to get you started on your energy journey. And again, if we can find you these savings, a lot of times this can springboard you in to more projects and just show that not only is EHS or sustainability a cost center at your organization, but actually an area where you can bring cost savings to your organization. So thanks again for joining us, and we will talk to you in August.